Okay, welcome to your unit live of your comparative essay project. This is your analysis comparing the elements of literature in 16 and Through the Tunnel. The first thing that you need to do when you're writing an essay is deciding on your thesis. Again, your thesis is the point you're making. What are you saying? What is the argument that you're trying to make? Are these two stories similar? Are they different? Do they utilize the same elements of literature? Is that use similar or different, and how do the authors utilize them? So there's a lot that can be said here when creating a thesis. A very simple thesis could just say, when comparing Through the Tunnel to 16, they have a lot in common, but there are also several differences. That way you're not necessarily taking a firm side, but you are being very clear about what it is you are saying. For writing this essay, you will need to select three main points. These are the options that you have for selecting your main points. You can discuss the tone, theme, setting, character, plot, point of view, or conflict in either of or for these stories. So what you're going to do is pick three of these literary elements, and throughout your essay, analyze how both stories approach that literary technique. So if we decide to choose theme, setting, and plot, our first body paragraph will discuss the themes that are found in 16 and compare those to the themes found in Through the Tunnel. Our next paragraph would talk about the setting in 16 and Through the Tunnel and make comparisons. And our third body paragraph would do the same thing for our plot of both stories. I want to discuss a little bit about writing your introduction. Since you are writing a literary essay, which means you're including pieces of literature or written work, you have to include the titles and the authors. This doesn't have to appear in the very first sentence you write, but it must be in your introductory paragraph somewhere. If these two elements are not in your essay, I will assign you a 0 and have you rewrite it. They have to be in there. If you're writing about a piece of literature or writing, that information must be included. Okay. That information fits really well as your introductory element because you can say something like, the story 16 by Maureen Daly and Through the Tunnel by Doris Lessing are about so you can say are about growing up or coming of age or what have you. So they fit really well in that location, but they don't have to be in that location. Once you have your introductory element, you need to explain the three main points. Again, you can choose to use the three literary points for the elements for your body paragraph. If you choose to, and I wouldn't recommend this, if you choose to, you could set up your essay so that your first body paragraph was just about 16, and your second body paragraph was all about Through the Tunnel, and then your third body paragraph would be the comparison between the two. I highly recommend using your first option, discussing the elements of literature, but that's kind of your call. I think it's easier to just pick an element of literature and then talk about the two stories in one paragraph versus picking a story and then writing about the three elements of literature in that one paragraph. But that's my personal recommendation and preference. It is your essay, and that's up to you. And then finally, the last item that needs to go into your introductory paragraph is your thesis statement. Again, this is your whole main point. Please, when you're writing this essay, do not, under any circumstances, include phrases like, in this essay, I'm going to talk about, or today, you are going to read about, or my essay is about. These do a few things. As a teacher, it tells me that you don't have a lot of experience writing essays, which is okay. That's the point of school, is you gain that experience. And I'm going to teach you not to use those phrases. And secondly, it's a little bit redundant. I can tell you've written an essay. I'm reading your essay. I can see what you're writing about because in your introductory element, you've told me, most likely, the author and the title. So I know what it is you're talking about. You don't need to tell me that you're going to tell me something. That's like someone coming up to you and saying, I have to tell you something. Will you listen to me? Well, I'm already listening to you. Speak, child. So just try to avoid those phrases where possible. Finally, when you get to writing your body paragraphs, again, you can choose to write the analysis of the story or the analysis of the element of literature. I can show you a few examples of the different ways we can do this, but they're going to go topic, sentence, evidence. Your evidence for this essay needs to be direct quotes from the text. So if you choose to write about the setting of Through the Tunnel, you need to discuss, he uses this wild beach and this red-brown stone jutting rock, and what that does. Again, you need to explain your evidence. Anytime you give evidence, it must be explained. So you can't just tell us this person was shot. You need to explain what that means. So again, if I use the quote about setting, explaining the setting, red-brown rocks, jutting, scraping, what does that tell us about the setting? You need to explain that evidence and why you've utilized it. And then also make sure you analyze or compare the two stories. So let's get a little example going here for you. Okay, so if I'm going to write about the element of literature, always indent at the first line of your paragraph. So this might be my topic sentence. The plot of Through the Tunnel and 16 are surprisingly similar, and then the rest of my essay would go on to explain that. Again, I would utilize quotes from both books, explanation of those quotes, and making sure I'm taking time in that paragraph to explain. Now, if I'm talking about the stories, in one of my body paragraphs, I might say, and that's not a that's not a brilliant topic sentence. Then I would go in and revise it after I had written it. But for this example, the story 16 utilizes tone, theme, and character to convey the coming of age. And I might change that because the theme is a kind of a coming of age, so I might switch out what I'm talking about. But then in this paragraph, I would go on to explain how Maureen Daly uses tone. Again, utilizing quotes from the books and explaining them. How Maureen Daly utilizes theme, quote, explanations, and character, quote, explanation of those quotes. And then finally, I would need to make at least some form of comparison to transition into my next paragraph, which would be about Through the Tunnel. If you choose to utilize this method where you're analyzing the stories, your final paragraph does need to be a complete analysis. So that means that your final body paragraph needs to discuss the tone, theme, and character comparison between Through the Tunnel and 16. Finally, writing your conclusion, you need to restate your thesis. Again, you don't need to cut and paste. You can cut and paste and just rewrite. I highly recommend that because it keeps it easy, but that's not necessarily required. In your conclusion, take a few seconds to explain how your main points prove your thesis. Again, for this example, we talked about saying that the stories are similar and different. So take a minute and explain how you've proven that. And then revisit your introductory statement. This is a great place, again, to utilize your titles and authors, because in your conclusion paragraph, you have to include the titles and authors somewhere in there. So that final sentence is a great place to do it. Some of the final touches, please, please, please indent. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have seen a student turn in a paper and it is one big block of text. As a reader, that terrifies me because I'm just seeing one blob, and it's worrisome. There are no paragraphs, and it makes me a very nervous person. So please indent the first line, because I will send it back to you and say, hey, I need some paragraphs, because this is terrifying. I won't even read it. Okay? A great technique to make your writing better is to read your essay out loud after it's finished. This is going to help you catch little grammatical errors, things that sound weird, and also if you're just reading it, it'll help you catch sometimes spelling mistakes, because you'll look at it and say, that's supposed to say conscious and that says conspicuous. If there's someone else available, have them read it out loud to you or read it for you. That's a great way to catch those mistakes. Don't be afraid to edit your papers. There's this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Perception, I suppose, that once you've written it, it's finished. That's not true. Once you have written it, you need to edit and revise your essay. Okay? Your first draft will never be the best draft. Your first draft will not be perfect. So don't be afraid to put in the extra time and make your essay better. If your essay still sounds choppy after you've edited it again. Fix it. I'm happy to edit essays for you and resubmit them back to you so that with feedback so you can fix them. That I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I would rather do that and have you turn in a beautiful essay and get a brilliant grade than have to keep turning it back to you or giving you a less than brilliant grade. Remember, the whole point of writing your essay is to prove that you understand the topic. If your essay doesn't fit that criteria, you need to rewrite. If your essay does not properly compare these two stories, then you haven't proven that you understand, and you do need to rewrite. Remember that as a student, you have the burden of proof. You have to prove that you know what you're talking about. That's why we give you assignments. If your work does not fit that criteria, you should rewrite it to prove that you know what you're talking about. Okay, that is your project comparative essay outline. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in class.